She posted a couple quote on Instagram with another guy. "This is what real love feels like, red heart," while we were still together. I liked it. Then sent the screenshot to her parents. The call I got after that was unexpected. "You wouldn't understand what real love feels like." She said it with a smile. Not to me. To the caption she was typing underneath a photo of herself pressed against another man, his arm hooked around her waist like he'd been holding her there for years, like he already knew what she felt like and wasn't letting go. The caption underneath read, "This is what real love feels like." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't part of that picture anymore. Posted publicly. For 2,400 followers. For her coworkers. For her college friends. For me. Lying in the bed we shared, in the apartment I helped pay for. On a Tuesday night, she'd told me she was working late. I stared at that photo for a long time. And then I did something that nobody, not her, not him, not her family, not even me, was ready for. I liked it. Let the little heart fill up red. Took a screenshot. And opened my message thread with her mother. What happened in the next 24 hours was not at all what I expected. Not the confrontation. Not the confession. Not the call from her dad that left me standing in my kitchen with my eyes burning and my phone pressed to my chest. And especially not the call from her mother that came later. The one that cracked open everything I thought I understood about that morning, about myself, about what I'd actually lost and what I hadn't. That call was the one I never saw coming. At that point in my life, I had everything riding on her. 2 years and 8 months of my time. My energy. My patience. My apartment keys on her keychain. A ring in the back of my sock drawer. Still in the box. Still wrapped in the thin tissue paper the jeweler had folded around it. Waiting for the right moment that I had been mentally rehearsing for months. I told my brother I was going to ask her by spring. He'd fist bumped me and said, "It's about time, man." I'd told my mom on a Sunday phone call, and she'd gone so quiet I thought the call had dropped, and then she'd just said, "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so happy." I'd done the math on the apartment lease, on our schedules, on which weekend would be the most memorable. I had picked the restaurant. I had picked the night. I had been carrying that plan around in my chest like something precious, something that belonged only to me until the moment I gave it to her. And in one Instagram post, at 11:47 p.m. on an ordinary Tuesday, every single piece of that future cracked straight down the middle. I didn't realize it then, but that night was the last night I would ever be that version of myself. The one who trusted completely. The one who gave without keeping score. The one who thought the floor was solid. That version didn't survive what came next. We'd been together 2 years and 8 months. Her name was Becca. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. She laughed at something I said, and I thought, okay, this one's different. She had this quality I couldn't describe for a long time and finally landed on. She made a room feel brighter just by choosing to engage with it. Not in a performance way. Not in the way that some people are entertaining because they need the audience. She was just genuinely interested in things, in people, in ideas, in whatever conversation was happening right in front of her. And that kind of real interest is rarer than it sounds. I fell for her fast. I'm not ashamed of that. She was worth falling for. She was in marketing. I was in logistics, not glamorous, but steady. We did the thing where you spend every weekend together without planning to, and then the thing where you start leaving clothes at each other's places, and then eventually the lease conversation. We moved in together after 14 months. It felt both too fast and exactly right. The first 6 months of living together were good, not perfect. We had the usual friction, the learning curve of two people negotiating the same space, the small discoveries about each other's habits that can go either way depending on whether you find them endearing or maddening. She stayed up too late. I was up too early. She left cabinet doors open. I reorganized things she hadn't asked me to reorganize. But we figured it out the way you do when you actually want to. Everything looked like the beginning of something that would last. Or at least, that's what it looked like to me. The first time something felt off, I told myself I was being paranoid. It was a Saturday afternoon in early spring. She was on the couch, cross-legged, phone tilted toward her, laughing quietly at something on her screen. Not a big laugh. A small, contained one. The kind you try to keep to yourself. "What's funny?" I asked. She tilted the screen away before she turned to look at me. "Just a meme," she said. "Work thing. Send it to me." She smiled. "You wouldn't get it." I let it go. I don't know why I let it go. Maybe because I was in the middle of something. Maybe because I didn't want to be that guy. The suspicious one. The one who interrogates his girlfriend over a laugh. But for just a second, I remember thinking, That's not how you hold your phone when you're reading a meme. When you're reading a meme, you hold it differently. You hold it closer when you're texting someone back. I filed that thought somewhere small and quiet and kept moving. I didn't realize then that I was already collecting pieces. I just didn't know what picture they were going to make. His name was Qley. I found that out later. At the time, he was just a name that started showing up in small ways. Not constantly, not in any way that would have triggered a rational alarm, but enough that if you were paying attention, you would notice. And eventually, I was paying attention. A group photo at a work happy hour. She posted it to her story. He was in it, second from the left, laughing at something, not touching her, just close. I didn't say anything. A few weeks after that, she posted another story. Her team had won some internal campaign competition, and there was a celebration at a bar near her office. He was in the background, holding up a glass, smiling at something she'd said. She'd mentioned him once, maybe twice, in passing conversation. Qley's been helping me rework the pitch deck. Qley thinks we should approach the client differently. Qley, just a coworker. That's what I told myself. That's what I was still telling myself 3 months later, when the floor dropped out. There was a Sunday afternoon in that stretch, a lazy, unremarkable Sunday, where I had what I now think of as the moment I almost asked. We were on the couch. She was scrolling through something. I was reading, and she laughed. That same quiet, private laugh. The one she tried to keep to herself. I put my book down. Tell me something, I said. She looked up. What? Anything, I said. Tell me something you're thinking about. She looked at me for a second, and there was this flicker of something across her face that I couldn't read. Not guilt exactly. More like a door almost opening and then quietly closing again. Work is just crazy right now, she said. A lot of moving parts. I nodded. Okay, I said. I picked my book back up, and the moment passed. Looking back, I think that was the closest she ever came to saying something real. And I didn't push. I thought I was being respectful of her space. I thought I was being the kind of partner who doesn't demand emotional labor on a lazy Sunday. I didn't realize I was watching a door close that would not open again. The thing about betrayal is that it almost never arrives like a storm. It comes in quietly, like water working its way under a door, slow and steady and almost invisible until you realize the floor is completely soaked and you have no idea how long it's been wet. There was a Wednesday in late March. I got home from work early. Unusual, but we'd finished a project ahead of schedule and my manager had cut us loose by 3 in the afternoon. I texted Becca. Coming home early. Want me to grab anything on the way? She didn't respond for close to an hour. When she finally did. No, I'm good. I'll be back by 7. Don't wait up. I wasn't going to wait up. I was already sitting at our kitchen table. I made dinner. I set 2 plates. She came home at 8:23. I didn't say anything about the time. I warmed up her plate without making it a moment. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Thank you. You really didn't have to." We ate. We watched something on TV. She fell asleep on the couch before 10. Everything looked fine. It was not fine, because somewhere between 3 p.m. and 8:23 p.m., she had been somewhere that she didn't mention, and she hadn't volunteered the information, and I hadn't asked. That was, in retrospect, the first in a long line of moments where I chose not to pull at the thread. I don't know if it would have changed anything if I had, but I think about it. The changes that followed were small enough to explain away individually. She started locking her phone screen faster, thumb sliding to the button almost before I could register what was on it. She started going to the gym at hours that didn't make logical sense for her schedule. She started having more work events that pushed her home past 8, 9, sometimes later. Now, I want to be clear about something. I am not a snooper. It is not in my nature. I believe in trust until there is a legitimate reason not to. And I have always thought that a relationship where 2 people are going through each other's phones is already a relationship that has failed in a more fundamental way. So I didn't snoop. But I noticed the way she laughed differently at whatever was on her phone. The way she'd slip out of the room to take certain calls. The way she stopped initiating anything between us. Not with a dramatic announcement. Not with a fight. Just gradually. The way you stop reaching for something you've mentally already let go of. I told myself she was stressed about a deadline. I told myself all relationships go through quiet phases. I told myself I was projecting. I believed every single one of those things because I wanted to believe them. Because the alternative was a conversation I wasn't ready to have. The first real fracture came on a Friday night. We'd made plans, dinner out, maybe something after. She canceled about an hour before we were supposed to leave. "I'm just exhausted," she said. "Can we stay in?" I'm sorry. I said of course. We ordered food. She spent most of the evening with her phone face up on the couch beside her, screen lighting up intermittently in a way I pretended not to notice. I fell asleep somewhere around 11. When I woke up past midnight, she wasn't next to me. I assumed she'd gone to bed. I walked into the bedroom. The lamp on her nightstand was still on. She was sitting up against the headboard, phone close to her face, both thumbs moving fast. When she heard me, she flipped the phone face down in one smooth motion and looked up with a smile that was almost convincing. Hey, I thought you fell asleep. I did, I said. Who are you texting? Just my sister, she said. She's going through something with her boyfriend. It's a whole thing. I looked at her. She looked at me. Okay, I said. I got into bed. She turned off the light about 5 minutes later. But I lay in the dark for a long time after that. Because her sister lives in a different time zone, 3 hours behind. And it was midnight, which made it 9 o'clock for her sister. Which was still fine, except for one thing. Her sister went to bed by 9. Every night. Without exception. Becca had complained about it more times than I could count. She's impossible to reach after 8. She goes to sleep like a child. So either something had changed, or she wasn't texting her sister. And I lay there doing the math in the dark, and I chose, again, to let it go. I chose not to start the conversation. I chose the silence. I don't know if that was cowardice or patience. Looking back, I think it was just fear. 3 weeks later, she posted the photo. I need you to understand the full picture of that night. It was a Tuesday. She had texted me at 6:04 p.m. Crazy day? Think I'll be stuck here until like 9. Don't wait for me to eat. I said okay. I made dinner. I ate alone at the kitchen table. I cleaned up. I watched TV for a while. I was half asleep on the couch around 11 p.m., scrolling through my phone on autopilot, not really seeing anything, when Instagram auto-refreshed and placed her post at the very top of my feed. I blinked. I sat up. The photo was taken at a rooftop bar, the kind of place with Edison bulbs strung overhead and a view of the city skyline, and a menu where the cocktails cost $18 apiece. She looked stunning in a way that told me she had put real effort into it. The black dress she'd bought months ago and then said was too nice for anything we ever actually do. Her hair was done. Her makeup was the full version she saved for things that mattered. She was laughing, not posed, not performative, but one of those real, unguarded laughs that people only have when they feel completely comfortable and completely unseen by any lens that matters to them. His arm was around her waist. At Qley was tagged in the photo, and the caption, "This is what real love feels like." I read it once. I read it again. And again. I set my phone face down on the cushion beside me. Picked it back up. Set it down again. Stood up. Sat back down. My dinner was still in my stomach. I had eaten alone. While she was at a rooftop bar in the dress she said was too nice for anything we did, with a man whose arm was around her like he'd earned the right to be there. And the caption said, "This is what real love feels like." Something shifted in me at that moment. Not rage. Not tears. Something much colder and much quieter. Like a door closing on one version of the night, sealing it shut. I picked up my phone. I double-tapped the photo. Watched the little heart fill up red. Took a screenshot. And then I opened my message thread with her mother. The woman who had pulled me into a hug at my first Thanksgiving with their family, who had saved my number under a name I know included a heart emoji, who sent me memes about cooking and asked me for gift ideas for Becca's birthday. I typed, "I don't want to put you in a difficult position, and I'm sorry if this is coming from nowhere, but I think you should see this. She told me tonight she was working late." I attached the screenshot. I hit send. Then I put my phone on the charger, turned off every light in the apartment, and walked to bed. Not from peace. Not from certainty. From a specific, bone-deep kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with having carried something heavy for far too long. She came home at 12:51 a.m. I heard the front door. I didn't move. She was quiet. Too quiet. The deliberate, careful quiet of someone who knows they're arriving somewhere they shouldn't be arriving at this hour and is trying to make themselves small about it. She came into the bedroom. She thought I was asleep. I was not asleep. I heard her take off her shoes. Heard the soft zip of the dress. Heard her phone set down gently on her nightstand. The way you set something down when you're trying not to make a sound. And then she got into bed. And she let out this long, slow exhale. The exhale of someone who has been holding their breath all night and has finally made it through. The exhale of someone who thinks they got away with it. I lay there in the dark and listened to her breathing slow down. And I thought about the ring in the sock drawer, and I thought about the restaurant I'd picked, And I thought about my mom going quiet on the phone when I told her I was going to propose. And I didn't sleep. She didn't check her Instagram until 7:18 a.m. I was already at the kitchen table with my coffee when I heard it. The specific, sharp sound of a person realizing their plan has collapsed. She came out of the bedroom holding her phone, and she was pale in a way I'd never seen her before. No makeup, still in the oversized shirt she slept in. Eyes wide. "You liked it," she said. "No good morning. No pretense of anything. Just that." I looked up from my coffee. "Good morning," I said. "You liked my post?" "I did." "Why?" Not a question. A flat line. "I thought it was a beautiful sentiment," I said. "Real love. Who wouldn't appreciate that?" Her jaw tightened. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Like what?" "Like anything. Something. You're just going to sit there?" "You told me you were working late," I said, very calmly. "Were you working late?" The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. "It's not what it looks like," she said. I looked at my coffee. "Okay," I said. "That's your response. What would you prefer?" "I want you to yell at me," she said, and her voice cracked slightly. "I want you to react. I want you to act like this means something to you." "It means everything to me," I said. "That's why I'm not yelling." She stood in the doorway of the kitchen for a long moment, something enormous and unreadable moving behind her eyes. And then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Every bit of remaining color drained from her face. She looked at me. "Why is my mom calling me at 7 in the morning?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "You should probably answer that," I said. She took the call in the bedroom with the door closed. I stayed at the kitchen table. I could hear her, but not clearly, just the rise and fall of her voice, the occasional sharp edge of a word, a long stretch of near silence that was probably her listening, and then another sharp edge. 11 minutes. I counted them without meaning to. When she came back out, she looked like someone had reorganized everything underneath her face. She sat down across from me at the table. She set her phone down between us like something she didn't want to be holding anymore. "You sent it to her," she said. "I did." "Why?" I thought about that question for a second. "Because your parents have always been good to me," I said. "Because they welcomed me. Because I thought they deserved to know the truth. Not to punish you, but because I was done being the only person in this situation who was being honest." She opened her mouth, closed it. "Cole is just. I don't want to hear about Cole right now," I said. "Then what do you want from me?" "Right now? I want to finish my coffee." She sat across from me in silence for a long time. Then she started crying. And not the kind of crying that's calculated. Not the kind that's meant to redirect the conversation or soften the other person. This was ugly and collapsing and real. The kind that happens when a person has finally run out of ways to hold something back. She pulled her knees up onto the chair like a child and cried into her own hands, and I sat across from her and felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Sadness. A deep, quiet sadness for the person I had thought she was. For all the plans that were now finished. For the restaurant I'd picked and would now never book. For all the small, private joy I'd been carrying in my chest for months. The kind you hold when you know something beautiful is coming that the other person doesn't know yet. That joy was gone now. And it was a specific kind of gone. Not the gone of losing something you'd had. The gone of something that had never gotten to be real. Those are different losses. The second one is harder to explain to people and harder to grieve. Because the thing you're mourning never technically existed. But it was real to me. It was as real as anything I've ever felt. "How long?" I said, when the crying got quieter. She didn't pretend not to understand. "About 3 months," she said. 3 months. The ring had been in my sock drawer for 4. I did that math fast. She had been seeing someone else during the same stretch of time when I was quietly planning to spend the rest of my life with her. "Were you going to tell me?" I said. She shook her head. "Not no. More like, I don't know." Which, somehow, is a worse answer than no. "What was the plan, Becca?" I said. "Keep going. Keep splitting the rent with me and the weekends with him until you figured out which one you liked better." "It wasn't like that," she said. "Then explain it to me." She wiped her face. "I got confused," she said. "Things between us started feeling like a routine. Like we were just two people going through the motions of being together. And Cole was just. He was something different. Everything felt new again." "New," I said. "I know how that sounds." "Honest," I said. "It sounds honest." Which is more than I can say for the last several months. She flinched. "Good." I got up from the table. I walked to the bedroom. I opened the back of my sock drawer. The box was right where I'd left it. Small, black, unassuming. I brought it to the living room and set it on the coffee table in front of her. She stared at it like it had appeared from nowhere. Is that? Yes, I said. She reached for it. Don't, I said. Not loud. Just clear. She pulled her hand back. We both sat there looking at it for a moment. And then I picked it up, put it in the front pocket of my jacket, and sat back down. I'd been planning to ask you this spring, I said. Since before Christmas. I picked a restaurant. I had a whole thing worked out. She had tears running down her face again. Fresh ones, different from the first wave. I didn't know, she whispered. No, I said. You didn't think to ask. The room was very quiet. I'm sorry, she said. I know, I said. I was getting ready to start mentally working through logistics. The lease, the furniture, the utilities, all the grim administrative work of separating a life that has gotten tangled with someone else's, when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Her mother. But calling me this time. I stood still for a moment. Then I picked up. Hello. I needed to call you directly, she said. Her voice was different from what I was used to. Not the warmth she usually brought to every conversation. Not coldness either. Something precisely in between, controlled, careful, like someone choosing each word individually. I know you're probably angry with her, she said. I'm not angry, I told her. I'm past angry. I know, she said. That's what I was afraid of. She paused. I have to tell you something, she said. Something I should have told you a long time ago, and I'm sorry that I'm only telling you now. I want you to hear it from me, and I want you to know it's not an excuse. It's just the rest of the picture. I sat back down on the couch. Something in her voice made me stop moving. Go ahead, I said. About 6 months ago, roughly the same time Cole appeared in Becca's orbit, Becca had called her mother. In tears. Not about another man. About me. She'd said she felt invisible. She said I worked too much, that I was always thinking about something else, that she could talk to me for 20 minutes and feel like she'd been speaking to a wall. She said she felt like she was disappearing inside the relationship. Like we were two people living parallel lives that occasionally touched, but didn't really intersect anymore. Her mother had listened. And then her mother had told her, you need to talk to him. Not to anyone else. Not to a coworker. To him. These things don't fix themselves, she told her. You have to say the words. Becca had said she would. She never did. She never told you any of this, her mother said. Not one word of it, I said. Not once. A long pause. That's what I was afraid of, she said quietly. She didn't cheat because she stopped caring about you, she continued. She cheated because she stopped talking to you. And I need you to understand, I'm not excusing it. What she did was wrong, and she knows it was wrong. But you are a good man, and you deserve to know the whole picture. Not just the half that makes the decision easy. I was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, some ordinary Tuesday morning was happening. Someone walking a dog past the building, a car reversing out of a driveway, birds doing whatever birds do at 8 a.m. when humans are sitting indoors with their chests cracked open, trying to figure out which way is up. Life, doing what it always does. Continuing without asking permission. She could have talked to me. I said. Yes, her mother said. She should have. You both deserve that. She knows that now. What you do with the rest of it, that's yours to decide, not hers. I've turned that conversation over in my mind more times than I can count. Because here's the thing that hit me, and hit me hard. I work in logistics. I am genuinely good at it. I understand systems, processes, how to keep things moving efficiently. I am considerably less skilled at the other kind of work. The kind where someone is trying to reach you sideways, in small, quiet ways, and you need to recognize it before they stop trying. I thought about the birthday where I'd booked exactly the restaurant she'd asked for, but forgotten to say she looked beautiful. Not because I didn't think she did, but because I was so focused on executing the plan correctly, the reservation, the flowers, the right table, that I forgot that the plan was never really the point. She was the point. I thought about the Saturday she'd wanted to stay home and talk, really talk, and I'd redirected us toward putting something on TV. I thought about all the times she'd started a sentence with, I feel like, and I'd jumped to a solution before she'd finished. I thought about a trip we'd taken, about 8 months before everything ended. A long weekend. Nice hotel, a city neither of us had been to before. She'd seemed distracted the whole time. Not unhappy, just somewhere else, just slightly not there. And I told myself she was tired. I told myself the drive had been long. I told myself she'd settle in once we had dinner. What I had not done was put my hand on hers across the table and say, hey, where are you? I had not created the space for the answer. I had managed the logistics of a good weekend and called it love. I'm not saying I caused what she did. I want to be absolutely clear about that. She made choices. She chose to lie. She chose to sneak. She chose to be somewhere she wasn't supposed to be and post a photo with a caption about real love while I was home eating a dinner I'd made expecting her. Those choices are hers. I didn't make them for her. But her mother's call cracked something open in me that I hadn't expected, because I had walked into that morning completely certain. And certainty is easy. It's ambiguity that costs you something. I found out more about Qley that same day, not because I asked, but because Becca talked in the way that people do when the pressure gets too high to keep containing. They'd met at a work conference 6 months ago. Nothing happened then. I believed that. They'd started texting about work, then not about work, then about everything. The first time they'd done anything beyond texting was about 3 months ago. A dinner, just the two of them. She told herself it was networking. I thought about that Friday night when she'd been too exhausted for our plans. I thought about the midnight texts. I thought about the gym trips that didn't make logical sense. I started placing pieces I'd been carrying without understanding what they added up to. Did you love him? I said. She didn't answer right away. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I don't know, she said. Do you love me? She looked at me with the most honest expression I'd seen from her in months. And it wasn't yes. It wasn't no. It was the slow, aching expression of someone who has genuinely lost track of what they feel and doesn't have the courage to admit it. I don't know, after 2 years and 8 months. After keys on a keychain and dinner plates on both sides of the table and a ring I'd been carrying in secret for 4 months. I don't know is still an answer. It's just not the one that lets you keep going. I didn't take her back. I need to say that plainly. The ring stayed in my pocket. By the end of the month, I had signed a lease on a smaller apartment, quieter, closer to work mine. We divided the shared things without fighting about it. She kept the couch she'd picked out. I kept the record player that had been mine before us. We sorted through the kitchen together on a Saturday afternoon. 2 hours of saying, that's yours, and you should keep that, in voices that were too polite, too careful, like we were strangers being courteous instead of two people who had slept in the same bed for 2 years. There was one moment. We both reached for the same mug. It was nothing, just a coffee mug. But we both pulled our hands back at the same time, and we stood there for a second, and then we both said, you take it, simultaneously. And then we both almost laughed, and the almost laugh was somehow the hardest part of the entire 2 hours. Because almost laughter is what's left when everything else is gone. We did the whole sad, logistical work of untangling two lives without dramatics. No screaming, no final speeches. No moment where I said the perfect thing and she understood the full weight of what she'd thrown away. Just paperwork. The dull, exhausting paperwork of ending something that used to matter. Qley, it turned out, disappeared from her life about 2 weeks after everything came out. Her mother told me. Yes, we kept in contact for a while. He had been seeing someone else. Not someone vague, not someone ambiguous. Someone specific, a woman in a different department who apparently had no idea about Becca either. In another version of the same story, playing out simultaneously in another apartment in the same city. So Becca had burned a 2-year, 8-month relationship for a man who was running the identical play on someone else at the same time. The rooftop bar photo. The caption about real love. The arm around her waist. All of it. All of that. And he had somewhere else to be after he dropped her home. I don't say that with cruelty. I say it because there is a particular kind of precision with which the universe occasionally arranges its ironies. And I think it deserves acknowledgement. Not because it makes me feel better. It doesn't really. But because the truth of a situation is the truth, and pretending the edges are softer than they are doesn't help anyone. The Instagram post was deleted before noon on Wednesday, but screenshots live forever. 3 of her friends texted me that week, separately, without knowing the others had reached out, to say they'd seen it and they were sorry. One of them added, she shouldn't have done that. I hope you're okay. I replied to each of them the same way. Thank you. I'll be all right. And I believed it, even on the days it didn't quite feel true yet. Her mother later told me there had been some professional fallout too, after the story made its way around her office the way these things inevitably do in places where people know each other well enough to talk. Becca called me once, about a week after I moved out, to mention she was dealing with some difficult conversations at work. I listened. I told her I was sorry she was going through it. And I meant it, because I am not built for revenge. I didn't send that screenshot to torture life. I sent it because I was done pretending. Because I was tired of performing normalcy while drowning in something I couldn't name. Because her parents had treated me like family and I thought they deserved to know the truth, not as a weapon, but as a fact. Her father called me once. Just once. He didn't stay on the phone long. He said, "You deserved better than that." Then goodbye. 5 words. And I stood in my kitchen holding my phone against my chest for a long time afterward. Because that quiet man, the one who showed up and fixed things without making a speech about it, had looked at the entire situation and found the only 5 words that actually covered it. 5 words. And somehow that landed harder than everything else combined. Because her father is a man of very few words. He shows up at things. He fixes things without making an announcement about it. He grills on Sunday afternoons and passes a plate to you without asking if you want one, because of course you want one. He had never once in my time with their family made a speech about anything. So 5 words from him was the equivalent of a paragraph from anyone else. And he chose those 5. And then he said goodbye, and that was all there was to say. The first week in my new apartment, I didn't know what to do with the silence. I'd spent almost 3 years calibrating myself to the presence of another person, their sounds, their warmth, the specific texture of sharing space, and the absence of that sat on me like something physical, like a weight that has no shape, like losing a tooth and having your tongue keep finding the gap even after you've told it to stop. The second night, I made too much pasta, just reflexively made enough for 2 people, stood at the stove looking at the pot, and felt something tighten in my chest that I didn't let myself name. I put 1 serving in a container, ate the other, cleaned up in a kitchen that was now entirely mine and somehow felt smaller for it. The third night, I called my brother for no reason. He picked up and I said, "Hey." And he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, "Nothing, just checking in." And we talked for 45 minutes about football and his job and some renovation thing he was planning, and at no point did I mention anything that was actually on my mind. But I felt better after. Sometimes you just need the sound of someone who knows you. I got through it the way you get through most things. One ordinary, unremarkable day at a time. I started cooking again. Actually cooking, not just assembling things quickly before she got home. I called my brother more. I got back into running, something I'd let slide quietly over the last year because our schedules never lined up for it. I started sleeping better than I had in months. That last part surprised me most. I hadn't realized how much I'd been bracing. For what, exactly, I couldn't have named, until I stopped. Until there was nothing left to brace for. My friend Nate told me something, about a month after I moved out. He'd run into Becca at a group outing, maybe 4 or 5 months before everything fell apart. She'd said something, casually, the way people drop truths when they're not quite conscious of doing it, about feeling like she was just existing in our relationship. He hadn't said anything to me at the time because he didn't want to be the person who creates a problem that might not actually exist. I understand that. I'm not angry at him. But I also sat with that for a while. Because it meant the information existed in the world before Qley appeared. It meant people around her knew she was struggling. It meant the conversation that might have changed everything was available. It just never found its way to me. And I still don't entirely know why. Maybe she didn't think I'd hear her. Maybe she didn't think hearing her would change anything. Maybe the idea of being that vulnerable to someone you already live with feels like too much of a risk when you're not sure they'll catch you. Maybe talking to me felt like too much effort by that point, and Qley felt like a door that was already open and required nothing from her to walk through. I don't know. I'll probably wonder about it for a long time. What I do know is this. She told her mother, and her mother told her what to do, and she chose not to do it. That's not my responsibility, but it's still a loss. The loss of a path we could have walked together that we never got to take. The ring. I gave it to my brother. He'd been with his girlfriend for 3 years and had been paralyzed about proposing for almost half of that. Not because he wasn't sure. He was sure. He was just afraid of the vulnerability of the moment, of what it meant to hand someone that much of yourself and ask them to do something with it. I understood that more than I ever had before. One night we were watching football, and I just pulled the box out of my jacket pocket. I'd been carrying it around still, which I know is strange, but it felt dishonest to bury it somewhere, and I handed it to him without ceremony. He looked at it, turned it over in his hands, then looked at me. "You sure? It's a good ring," I said. "It deserves to be on someone's finger." He didn't say anything for a moment, just nodded slowly, the way he does when something lands. He asked her 2 weeks later on a Sunday afternoon at the park where they'd had their first date. She said yes before he finished the sentence. I went to their engagement party and laughed louder than I had in months and drank a little too much of the good wine and rode a cab home at midnight feeling something I couldn't quite put a name on. Not happiness, though I was genuinely happy for them. Not grief, though some of that was still there, quieter now. Something more like readiness. Like a season that had changed while I wasn't paying attention. Like somewhere between that kitchen table on a Wednesday morning and that engagement party on a Saturday night, I had quietly become a different version of myself. Not better, not worse, just different. Someone who knew more. Someone who would carry what he'd learned instead of dropping it. I saw Becca once, about 5 months after everything. Grocery store. Neither of us had been expecting it. She looked good, steady, grounded, like she'd found some floor under herself again. We stood in the cereal aisle and had one of those accidental moments that feel roughly 6 times longer than they actually are. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I said. "How are you doing?" "Good," I said. "You?" "Getting there," she said. And then, "I'm sorry. I know saying that doesn't fix anything." "No," I said. "It doesn't. But I appreciate it anyway." She nodded. I nodded. She turned left. I turned right. No closing speech. No tears in the frozen food aisle. No dramatic final moment. Just two people navigating around each other in a world that keeps moving regardless of whether you're ready for it. People ask me sometimes, friends, co-workers, whoever heard the story secondhand, whether sending the screenshot to her parents was the right call. I think about that question genuinely. It wasn't conventional. It wasn't the standard breakup move. Most men in that position confront, argue, demand answers, or go silent. I liked a photo, took a screenshot, and texted her mom. But here's what I know about why I did it. I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to build an audience. I wasn't trying to maximize damage. I was exhausted, and her parents had been kind to me. And somewhere in me, I needed witnesses. Not to the betrayal, but to the fact that I had responded to it without losing myself in it. That I had seen it clearly, had not fallen apart, had handled it without fire. Her father's 5 words were the only validation I received. And they were enough. There's a version of this story where I'm the hero, where I did everything right, and she did everything wrong, and the takeaway is clean. I've heard people tell that version. Guys who heard what happened, who nodded along, who said, "Good, she deserved it." And part of me appreciates the solidarity. But that version isn't quite true. The true version is messier. The true version is, 2 people who loved each other stopped finding a way to reach each other, and one of them handled it badly, and both of them paid a price. And the lesson, if there is one, and I'm not sure there is, not a neat one, is that love isn't a feeling you can caption. You can't post your way into something real. You can't rush toward the version of love that looks good on a rooftop bar and call it the whole thing. The whole thing is quieter, harder, more demanding. The whole thing requires you to say the things that don't photograph well. She didn't know that yet. I didn't know it well enough either. We both know it better now. That's something, at least. The truly unexpected thing about that call from her mother wasn't what she told me about Cole. It wasn't even the revelation that Becca had been struggling for months in ways she'd never voiced to me. The unexpected thing was what that information did to me. Because I had walked into that morning prepared to be clean. The wrong party. The one with nothing to examine. The one who got to be entirely the victim of someone else's choices. And her mother handed me a mirror. Not as punishment. Not with accusation. Just with honesty. The kind of honest that only comes from someone who has nothing left to lose by telling it, and who cares enough about you to say it anyway. And I had to decide what I was going to do with what I saw in it. I could have gotten defensive. I could have said, "That's not my fault. She should have talked to me." And I would have been right. But I also could have been better. Not perfect. Not responsible for her decisions. But better at showing up in the quiet spaces. Better at noticing the slow, steady withdrawals before they became something impossible to reverse. Better at making it feel easier for her to say I feel invisible rather than going somewhere else to be seen. I carry that forward. Not as guilt. Not as self-punishment. As information. The kind you can actually use. The last thing her mother ever texted me, about 3 months after I moved out, a message I wasn't expecting at all, read, "I hope you're doing well. I mean that sincerely. You were always the kind of man who deserves someone who knows what they have. Take care of yourself." I read it 3 times. Then I saved it. Not as evidence of anything. Not as a monument to what happened. Just as something to come back to on the days when it was hard to believe it. She posted that caption thinking it was a declaration. Thinking it was the beginning of something that would finally feel real. But declarations don't make anything real. Showing up makes things real. The ordinary Tuesday nights. The dinner made for someone who said they'd be home. The conversation you have before things get so broken they can't be put back together. She chose the caption. I chose the receipt. And her parents chose the truth. That call changed everything I thought I understood about that morning. Not about her, about myself. And maybe that's the only thing, in the end, that was ever really mine to take. The ring is on her finger now, my sister-in-law, and every time I see it, I think, good, that's exactly where it belongs.